Hi, I'm Stephanie, and my claim today is that the establishment of English-only laws will have negative effects on non-English speakers. If I were to ask you guys what is the official language of the U.S., a lot of you guys would probably say English, but but according to my research, there actually is no official language in the United States at a federal level, and these laws seek the establishment of English as a nation's official language. There have been many proposals. John Adams is probably the earliest one. In 1780 he proposed it, but it was rejected under the claims that it threats individual freedom. Revival of English-only movement began in the 80s, so roughly 30 years ago. These movements promote that legislation restrict and prohibit the use of languages other than English by government agencies. You guys are probably thinking, what is an English law? And these are just laws that declare English as the official language of the state. So far, there are 16 states that have English-only laws, and many more considering it. Just to name a few, there's Arizona that established it in 2006, California, 1986, Florida, 1988. The earliest one I found was Nebraska in 1923, so that's in the 20s, and Virginia, 1981. And these laws have many consequences to people that obviously are non-English speakers, because they try to void all state and federal laws that provide services other than English. According to the article that I have, it restricts bilingual education programs, prohibits multilingual ballots, forbids non-English government services in general, which include courtroom translations or multilingual emergency lines. So in other words, if you were to sent to court and you don't know English, you're probably not going to be able to defend yourself or go on and prove your case. It bans bilingual ballots, so if you don't even know who you're voting for, or you don't know the information about anybody, how are you supposed to know who's going to represent you? And as a child, it also limits child's rights to education by restricting bilingual instruction. Obviously, English is my second language. So if it weren't for these programs growing up, I probably would be very behind. Obviously now I've learned. According to the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, they ruled that requirements that employees speak English on the job violate the 1964 Civil Rights Act, because this violates the workers' right to be free of discrimination in workplaces. Also, U.S. citizenship does not require English literacy for people over 50 and or who have been in the U.S. for 20 years or more. These campaigns target Latinos and Asians, probably because they're the newest forms of immigration that has surfaced in this country. According to the American Civil Liberties Union, it is inconsistent with equal protection laws of the 14th Amendment. They state that English-only laws are inconsistent with both the First Amendment right to communicate with or petition the government, as well as free speech and the right to equality, because they bar government employees from providing non-English language assistance and services. Professor James C. Thomas from the University of Tulsa says it violates the right of free speech, and that the Supreme Court English provision violated the free speech clause of the Constitution. So he's practically rephrasing what the American Civil Liberties Union says. Bottom line is, we are a multilingual nation. Even though English is a de facto language with 82% claiming it as a native tongue, English-only laws single out minorities. They are not helpful for people that don't speak English. And once again, these laws are here to bring negative effects for non-English speakers.
Thank you. All right, you start off very clearly with the statement of the proposition, and you identified that that is the claim for the argument. I thought that it was worded appropriately, although I do think you need to define what the English-only laws constitute, especially since you mentioned later on that a large number of states have adopted them. Are they uniform? For instance, you say they seek to prohibit the provision of services in anything other than English, and I would like to see the data that says that, that somebody has interpreted it that way. Who's given that interpretation? Because that seems to contradict the court rulings that you talk about. It appears that you say it's violating the Constitution, and yet we've got 16 states who are doing it. If we've got 16 states that are only allowing English in courtrooms and only allowing English in voting situations, where are the cases, where are the illustrations of some harm or problem occurring? That's, I think, something that seems intuitive. If you've got these things that are going on right now because of the laws that you're saying exist, then we ought to be able to see some hard data and some illustrations about problems that are happening. Instead, what we have mostly is speculation about what would happen. I'm not sure if you are equivocating English only and English as the national language or the official language. English only laws, I think, might be problematic, and I definitely think that they cross the line on some of those constitutional issues that the ACLU is talking about. I'm not sure if anybody is proposing English only laws, but I have heard people arguing that English ought to be the official language. Does that necessarily mean, for instance, that you can't get a translator for courtroom appearance, or that you can't get a ballot or instructions for the driver's manual in another language? That's the part that I think you need better information on, because it seems to me that what you've got there is highly speculative, especially since we've got all those states that apparently are doing this. Well, let's see the experience in those states. Where is that information? I thought you did a pretty nice job presenting the ideas and information, but it needs a structure. Everything just seems to be kind of pouring out, and there doesn't seem to be a plan for it. There was no preview. There wasn't any internal signposting of the numerical secondary claims, and I think that that is a problem. There are a few pieces of testimony evidence that are cited. They're very generic, but you did provide a citation on them. They seem to kind of conclusionary, and that's why I think more specific information would be helpful to you on those points as well. For instance, you mentioned bilingual education. In Arizona, for instance, if they've got an English-only law and there is no bilingual education, then we ought to see that there are problems in the schools, that kids aren't passing. Where's the data that says those sorts of things? That's what we need in this argument to make it more substantive. All right, thank you. Troy? And again, if you are evaluating Troy or you are responding to Troy, this is your speaker.